Well, we're finally halfway through the season. That means it's laundry day, so we're all wearing someone else's stuff.
If you haven't seen this week's episode of BattleBots, consider this your warning. You're about to get major spoilers.
This week we hear from Kurt Durjan from Axe Backwards, Zach Goff from Copperhead, and also Lilith Talks Cutlery.
I'm Will Bales from Bite Force.
I'm Mike Galately from Hijinks.
I'm Andrea Galately from Nightmare, and this is a Tale of the Tape after show. Welcome to the Tale of the Tape after show. Let's get started with our 30-second recap.
30 seconds on the clock.
Captain Shrederator finally made good on his spin to win, and then kept on spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. P1 loses pole position to Copperhead. Beta's hammer swing was worth the wait, but Rusty's butt disagrees.
Hypershock finally sucks less.
Finally!
Thank goodness. Sub-Zero used a spork to play with its food. Tracer takes Bales Spear to the glue factory. Goodness. And Whiplash puts on an absolute driving clinic. This week's deep dives, let's start with Axe Backwards and Kurt Durjan. I thought it did surprisingly well. Yes, they lost, but he was so dexterous, which is like the exact opposite of what normally you see from Axe Backwards.
Yeah, he took a couple of big hits from Shrederator, and his weapon actually kept spinning.
And he actually drove really well. He really tried to control the match. I know Kurt has gotten a tough time because he has a lot of losses, but I think if this is the start of the new Axe Backwards, we're going to start seeing some wins.
Yeah, so let's hear straight from Kurt.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Kurt Durjan here, team captain of Axe Backwards on the famous TV show BattleBots. You guys already know all that because it's the tail of the tape here. Axe Backwards started out as a drawing on a napkin. I was driving down the side of the road one day and saw a oil barrel or a fuel barrel or some sort of metal barrel on the side of the road and thought, man, that would be awesome spinning at 200 miles an hour, flying down the side of the road, eating cars. So I drew that on a napkin and took it over to our sponsors back in 2018, and I said, do you think we could actually build this? And they were like, why not? Let's try. So we started doing that, and it evolved into what you saw in 2018 in season 1. This year, we made tons of changes since 2019 and the 2018 seasons. We used a lot of titanium this year. We ended up putting more steel in the drum than aluminum. And our frame itself actually has a lot of hardware in it that is in tension now and instead of shear. Our first iteration in 2019 that uses a very similar design to this year had tons of bolts and shear, and we were getting split in half multiple times. Almost every fight we had to do a complete rebuild of the robot. So this year we decided we didn't want to do that anymore and came up with a new design inside the drum that holds it together much better. We also added a wedge to our robot this year for Captain Shrederator's fight. We knew that if we were going to keep getting horizontal spinners over and over again, we needed something that was going to level the playing field rather than just coming at us hard on, hitting a hard surface. We needed to lift them up slightly. And that wedge evolved on set, actually. We built that in about 3 days. We catted it up. We figured out we could get away with the weight if we took a couple of the teeth off the drum and lost some weight. I don't even remember where we lost the weight for that fight, but we ended up getting a little bit of weight that we needed to come off to end up making the wedge work. So we did the wedge on set. We did it with the help of Lincoln and Tormach and the guys at the machine shop. Those were great. They were able to get us the pieces we needed, welded it up, and tried it just for that fight. I don't even think we had it painted yet for that fight. So we ended up using the wedge for that, and it was great. So the fun facts about our team that we have, my favorite is that our youngest member of our team, Grant, he designed the flamethrower from scratch. He 3D printed it, he modeled it, he put butane canisters in it. We ordered a bunch of different sized butane cylinders from Amazon, and he made an igniter and got to the event and saw all these other flamethrowers and was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how many different types of flamethrowers there are and how many different ways there are to execute it. So seeing him start with our design with a napkin drawing all the way to a full-fledged product was awesome. We were able to put it in the robot every fight. It works great. It looks cool. The slow motion effects when BattleBots plays our flamethrowers makes us look really cool. I love the fire.
In our second deep dive, we're going to talk about P1 versus Copperhead. And I've been super impressed with Copperhead so far, and he got another dominant win tonight.
Yeah, Copperhead seems like they figured out all the little nitty-gritty things that were plaguing him last year. So they're two-hit KOing everybody.
And those mini bots, I really want to see how they made those. So let's throw it right to Zach Goff.
Hey everyone, this is Zach with Team Copperhead. Thanks for having me on the show. I just want to say it's great to be the face of the team, but it takes a lot of members to bring Copperhead to life. So quick shout out to Rob and Kim and Luke and Pete and Casey. Without their help, I mean, this team wouldn't exist. So let's get into it. Gotten some questions. People asking, Copperhead looks a lot the same this year. What's different? Why are you doing a little bit better this season? We didn't spend the whole off season being complete lazy bums. We spent a ton of time going through everything that failed from last year and just making slight tweaks and improvements. For example, in our Kronos fight, the whole frame rail split from the front of the robot. And that was actually due to a manufacturing defect in the drum axle, and the bolt hole that holds the whole front of the robot together was machined a bit too big, so we weren't getting good thread engagement. So, new drum axles with the proper tolerances. We also made sure to through harden them, so harder steel this year for the drum axles, and so far it hadn't been an issue. So just lots of little small improvements. Optimizing things, we've got same weapon motors. You'll notice that our drum spins up in like 4 seconds this year compared to like the 8 or 10 seconds it took last year. Still got the same motors, but we did a slightly different wind to optimize the power curve of the motor. And we're actually dumping about 70% more power into these motors now, getting about 70% more out of them. So that really helped us reduce our spin up speed issues. So lots of little improvements. I know Rob Cowan, he's done a whole YouTube video on exactly all the little tweaks that we made. So hopefully we can get a link down in the description. Y'all can check that out and see for yourselves if you're really curious. We also get a lot of questions about why is Copperhead so small? Seems to be a bit of a disadvantage. Well, it's not too much because all the robots weigh 250 pounds. So you can kind of think of it as like you've got this really small toned robot full of muscle, really tight muscle going up against some of these really big robots that are just, kind of chubby and don't have a lot of power packed into them. So that's kind of what we're going for with Copperhead. Keep it compact. One of the main advantages is, we all have to hold up to the blows from these high powered kinetic energy spinners. So the smaller we can make it, the stronger the structure gets to be, because we can use thicker structural members. They don't have to span as far. We can use thicker armor because if your robot gets big, you have to thin out your armor because you only got so much weight budgeted for your armor. So making it really small and compact just makes it a lot more structurally sound. It does come with a lot of disadvantages, though. So we've had issues because our robot is so rigid and small. The shock loads will just get transferred into the soft, juicy guts of the robot. A lot of these bigger robots, they have a lot of flex to them, almost like crumple zones. And in the extreme case, like huge, it just kind of deforms to absorb the blows. Whereas Copperhead, it's just going to get hit, and it's just knocks it silly. So being small has its own disadvantages. Obviously we're at the extreme end of the design spectrum. In fact, this season confirmed Copperhead is the smallest robot. Second runner up being Tantrum. Me and Aaron Hill, we got together and whipped out our measuring sticks and found out that Copperhead is just a bit smaller. So yeah, smallest robot. Whether that's the best thing remains to be seen. We'll see throughout the rest of the season how that plays out for us. But so far it's working out. We do have a new paint scheme, obviously. We did that for a couple of reasons. First, we wanted to distinguish last year's Copperhead from this year's, so that there's a differentiation, at least outside, externally, visibly. And we thought, with everything going on in the world and how crazy it's been, we kind of wanted to have a bit of a post-apocalyptic Mad Max sort of vibe. So that's where the rust idea came from. Basically just mixed up a mixture of acid, hydrogen peroxide, and salt, and sprayed down the robot. Got that real nice patina on there. Locked it in with a clear coat of acrylic, and then brought in some of the old design elements from the previous paint scheme to kind of tie the new robot back to the old, so that there's still a bit of continuity in the machine. You can still recognize it as Copperhead. One of the other things we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback in is the little baby snakes, the mini bots. So these were the brainchild of Luke, and the whole strategy behind baby snakes was to make good TV. To be honest, they don't have a lot of offensive capability, and some people will say, oh well, maybe you get the other competitor, High Center, the other robot might get stuck on one of the baby snakes. And honestly, these things are like cheap $20 Alibaba plastic snakes. They're literally fragile like eggshells. So I don't think they're going to do much against another 250-pound robot when they maybe weigh an ounce and have plastic as thick as some packaging for an electronic device. They're really nothing. Maybe the best they could do is be a bit of a distraction. You see something moving out of the corner of your eye as a driver, and your attention goes there instead of maybe Copperhead comes in for a nice big hit. But otherwise, that's about it, and making the audience happy. And they're really a Frankenstein between this plastic RC snake toy, which is total junk. Half of them didn't even work out the box. So we had to go find some slightly better off-road RC cars, had some big tires so that they wouldn't get hung up on like a little grain of rice that might be in the arena, or they could run upside down. Had a better radio so they'd actually work in the arena. The little snake bots, they were IR remotes like your TV remote, and it doesn't really work in the battle box. So Frankenstein this snake and this RC car together with the power of 3D printing, and that's how you end up with baby snakes. So Luke will definitely be putting a video together. I know he's gotten a lot of questions, so we'll get that posted on the Copperhead team page and into the BattleBots group.
For our last deep dive, we're going to be talking about Sporkinok, which is a robot that's had some teething issues, but I can't wait to see that Spork really show its potential.
Yeah, Sporkinok's one of the late additions to this season of BattleBots. After the initial postponement of the show, they got in and they built a robot in record time to get there and compete.
And Lilith has a long-standing obsession with Sporks, so I can't wait to hear what she has to say about it.
So Sporkinok was first built about 10 years ago in the Antweight class. It was an overnight build for GCRS, I think the second one, by Robot Marketplace and Jim Smentowski. And the reason it had a Spork is because it was a thwackbot. I put some super high-speed Beetleweight motors in an Antweight, and I needed a hammerhead. And I looked at a spoon that I had eating some cereal or something, and I was like, I could Dremel some slots into that and make it a Spork. So I said, yeah, why not? Let's go ahead and do it. And then my sister looked at it and was like, you should call it looks like a scorpion. You should call it Sporkinok. I think this is like way long ago. I don't remember exactly, but she is the one that came up with the name. I think it was around the time that the Michael Bay Transformers movie came out, and Scorponok, the Transformer, in that had a really cool design. So Sporkinok was originally supposed to be a kinetic energy transfer flipper / hammer, one or kind of interchangeable weapon types. But when we got the green light for BattleBots Season 5, that was at near the end of August, I think, like right about 1 month of build time. And I made the decision that I did not have enough time to fully R&D that weapon and the trigger mechanism and all of it. So I tabled that and just made it a traditional hammer and lifter. So as it is built, I kind of just winged it on the design. I was like, all right, let's find a linear actuator. Let's put another one of the drive gearboxes for the hammer and hope it works. And the build came together pretty quick. A lot of it was I got a lot of stuff laser cut by Send Cut Send. I got a few parts cut by Big Blue Saw. And then the rest I was trying to use off-the-shelf components as much as I could, because I did not have time to custom build a whole lot. So the drive gearboxes were custom designed. The machining for them was done by our sponsor P3D Creations, and the gears are Andy Mark 20 pitch. I kind of fell on the design for that because Andy Mark gears were off the shelf, so they were very easy to source and they were relatively inexpensive. So I could really quickly design a gearbox and produce one. The motors are the same motors that Jackpot uses, so that kept the cost very low. They are brushless. The controllers for that were provided by Equals Zero, another one of our sponsors. And, it was untested territory. Some of it worked. The motors definitely showed they had the power. It's just a matter of extracting that power to the ground and driving. A lot of the teething issues we had was with the drive. It was all untested. They were brand new brushless motors. They were custom gearboxes, and we simply did not have enough time to test them before we shipped out. The Andy Mark gears showed a lot of promise, but I think I need to double them up because we did strip a couple. The motors also show promise, though they are on custom shafts, which I just need to, beef up a little bit. One part I did not have trouble with was the chain drive. The wheels we got from Tractor Supply did not provide enough traction. And then especially in the Sub-Zero fight, when we removed the front two 4-inch wheels, it just did not have enough weight over the wheels and to make up for the lack of traction. The other teething issues we had with the hammer is that the VESCs were not programmed the same. So the two motors kind of fought each other in the weapon setup, which caused them to not actually be fast. Live and learn. So our upgrades for next season we're going to move VESCs to the drive so we can have some censored goodness, hopefully. And we're going to put the brushless rages on the flywheel, which we're going to do. We're going to do the flywheel flipper and a flywheel hammer. Gonna do it. So as BattleBots mentioned in the intro to the Sub-Zero fight, I am the lead organizer of Robot Ruckus. It occurs most years at Maker Faire Orlando in Orlando. It is currently the only open registration heavyweight event, and it's grown from an insects-only event that would span one day to being a two-plus day mega event, and it's a lot. It gives space for some of the robots to get full testing footage. I've been told that Mammoth would not have gotten into BattleBots if it did not have footage from Robot Ruckus. And you look at especially the Florida gang, and there are so many robots that have come from Robot Ruckus. You've got Extinguisher, you've got Gruff, you've got Mammoth, you've got now Rampage, and it has just grown into such an amazing thing. And our sponsor, the Maker Effect Foundation, is actually behind a lot of that support that we have gotten. Without the foundation, we'd still be just an insect event run by me alone. And now it's the volunteer efforts and just the ability to continue running Robot Ruckus at Maker Faire Orlando is amazing.
In the Podbuster this week, Kurt from Axe Backwards, fellow Florida man, did a drive-by Chris roast. Take a look.
I thought I was going to get it. I thought I was...
Dude, did you get his plate number? Yeah. That Kurt.
Not sure if body shaming the robot or damage shaming.
Now it's time to answer your burning fan questions.
Hey, Tale of the Tape and Technical T-Rex. This is Kyle with the Behind the Bots podcast with this week's big fan question. This week's question comes from David Wang. David wants to know, why did Shrederator keep spinning after its fight with Axe Backwards? Great question, Dave. I look forward to your answer.
Wow, that's a really great question. We are going to throw this to Technical T-Rex.
He's not here again, is he?
Technical T-Rex, Technical T-Rex. The T in T-Rex stands for technical.
Brushed motors, like the ones powering Captain Shrederator's shell, can be controlled in two different ways: electronic speed controllers, ESCs, and contactors. ESCs can handle less power but allow you to vary the speed of the motor like a light dimmer. Contactors are more like an on-off switch. The motor gets all the power all the time once they're on. ESCs are more complicated and can lead to reliability issues. Contactors are simpler and generally more robust. Before this fight, Brian Nave from Captain Shrederator said he swapped from the finicky new technology in ESCs to the tried and true old school technology in contactors. As a result, Captain Shrederator was able to dish out hit after hit without failure. The problem arose when it was time to turn the bot off. Because of the way contactors work, turning it on can cause a large spark. This spark can melt the metal in the contactor, welding itself together so it cannot turn off. The only way to safely turn off the robot was to wait until the batteries died and the weapon finally stopped spinning, which this time took 40 minutes.
For tonight's Thing of the Week, we have... Suck Less of the Week. I think we need to throw this one to the team that sucked less this week.
Hey!
Who's that?
How does it feel to not suck?
Sucking less.
It was a good one. We had finally a good fight. It wasn't perfect, at least from our perspective, but it did the thing.
Obviously, in your first fight, you had some severe driving issues that limited your mobility. Can you kind of talk about how you got Hypershock working as well as it was?
Yeah. So going into the Gruff fight, we really didn't have much time at all to test anything. We had single-digit minutes of motor running testing time, very low single digits. The fact that we got into the match at all was a tour de force. So after the match, we learned a lot of things. Number one, we had chain tension issues. So all the motors quit because the chains on the drivetrain and the weapon just came off. So we built chain tensioners on site and we added them to the robot. So that fixed that problem. The sensors in the brushless motors are very complicated and full of magic and wizardry. But what matters is the sensors that help them work well weren't working well for this fight, actually. We were going in sensorless. There were a lot of little finicky issues in trying to adjust parameters and tune the system to work well enough that I could drive around. And part of the reason I was drifting around so much is because I couldn't stop, turn, and go. I had to keep the wheels moving the whole time.
The fact that Hypershock works best in full YOLO drift mode is kind of fitting, though.
Yeah.
Like, you should just use contactors for drive. I don't think you should have speed controllers at all.
Yeah, well, so the fact that everything worked, the weapon spun, continued to spin the whole time, was great. But you probably noticed that we were stuck underneath Mammoth, up against the screws. So we backed into the screws, and then they were on top, and we couldn't move. You could maybe see the wheels twitching. That was all we could do. And that's because of the issues we were having. So they finally pivoted a little bit, and that was enough to get us out of and free. But in the backing up into the screws, we damaged the frame. Actually, the rear left wheel got towed in, so it was rubbing on the armor. It wasn't ideal.
So at the end of the fight there, we see that Mammoth obviously stuck upside down, can't really do much. You broke their weapon. Not really much was happening. You're very, very excited, asking them if you can go in for another hit or if they want you to go in for another hit. And they say, bring it on.
I see thumbs up coming from Ricky.
Yep.
And that's all I see and all I hear.
So you go in for a perfectly targeted hit and you hit
the one thing that they didn't want us to hit. Yeah. So normally in the the driver's pod, it's you and your opponent right next to each other, and you could go and touch the other guy on the shoulder if you needed to. But because of COVID this year, there was a divider. So just getting his attention to ask what do you want me to do was hard. And I was, you saw in the pod buster that I asked, was trying to get his attention for probably 5-10 seconds. And when I finally got it, I'm using hand signals with a transmitter in my hand, do you want me to hit the thing? And I got like thumbs up. He's like, yeah, and that's all I can understand. I didn't get the just don't hit the battery box thing.
Yeah, because not only is it hard to get people's visual attention, but you can't hear anything.
Right,
Because it's a giant piece of plexiglass.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, you want me to hit you again? Cool. I mean, that's where we'd be too. So I'm like, okay, all right, we're playing. So I line up, and in fairness, there's not a whole lot to look at in terms of Mammoth's like visual density. There's like the wheels and the battery box, and everything else is like a spindly mess, especially now. So I knew that if we tried to hit any of the tubes, we just cut right through it. That's one of the cool things that we like about Hypershock is how sharp the discs are. But in terms of like trying to flip them over or getting a really good hit, it just wouldn't happen. It would just cut right through. So I need to hit like the wheels or the battery box, and I'm like lining up to hit the wheels, which frankly, I'm sure they wouldn't have been too appreciative of either. But because of that towed-in wheel that I mentioned, it was starting to drift to the left. So I started lined up for the wheel, and by the time that we actually hit them, we hit the battery box. And then all the magic smoke comes out, and I start to feel very bad. I am so sorry, Ricky. I'm incredibly sorry. It kept smoking for a very long time. That's our show this week. Just take a moment and watch all these wonderful robots that may have happened to lose.
Turn it off!
This week we hear from Axe Backwards and Kurt Durjan after his pretty great win against, no, he didn't even win. What the hell, man?
He didn't win.
He didn't win. Everything's made up.
That's it. That's the show for this week. Tune in next week, and that's the crap. That's absolute turds.
Technical T-Rex, technical T-Rex. The T in T-Rex stands for technical. Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!